Fuck. So I just spent like 40 minutes talking about this subject that we're gonna talk. Well, you've seen it in the title. Yeah, we're gonna talk about the problem with tanks in Marvel Rivals. I spent 40 minutes talking about them, and I wasn't even finished yet. And so what happened was that I ran out of space. So my recording program or software just stopped recording, which is fine, but the file got damaged because of it, so I couldn't. I just lost everything. So we're gonna do this one more time, all right? And I've just made enough space that it's not gonna happen again. So Marvel Rivals. I haven't made videos in a little while. It's been Christmas, it's been New Year's, and normally I do League of Legends stuff. But I figured that this game is the talk of the town right now. Everyone's playing it, everyone and their grandmother. So why don't we talk about it? Because I don't think the game is going to survive in its current state. And I don't even know if it is possible to save it. Now that's like really doom. So don't go panicking yet if you don't like, dooming about it. It's completely understandable. We won't be that negative about this entire video, or rather in this entire video. It's just gonna be, the introduction here, right? So Marvel Rivals has some pretty deep problems that are really difficult to fix. The big issue is that they are trying to capitalize on the genre of the hero shooter. And hero shooters are really difficult to do because Overwatch just fucking murdered the chance of anyone else doing anything. And there's a very specific reason why. Overwatch's engine is so crazy good. It is so high quality. And the feeling of playing Overwatch, the feeling of the game is so incredibly high quality that no one can get close, because the amount of money and resources you have to invest to even replicate it remotely is so much. It's so fucking much. And you might say that that doesn't matter to you, but trust me, it matters to everyone. If you aren't aware of it, then that's one thing, but it does matter to everyone, and you're going to feel it in the long run. If there's ever gonna be another hero shooter which you would find cool that has a better engine than Marvel Rivals does, then you're going to jump ship most likely, unless you are here for the IP, which fair enough. The issue with Overwatch is that the game has been mismanaged. And that's why there's a hole in the market for a hero shooter, because Overwatch could easily just beat the shit out of everyone that even tried anything. Like, easily. They just fucked up because corporate douchebags can't, for the life of them, control their products and the what are they called? Fucking projects, right? So what I believe to be three big, or at least some of the three big issues. What am I saying? Some of the big issues that I think Marvel Rivals has. Overall feel of the game. This is what I talked about in terms of Overwatch, the engine, the physics, the visual effects, sound effects, animations, all this kind of stuff. The way that it feels to use abilities, the way that it feels to play out the game. Then we have team ups, which are going to get very old and uninteresting very, very quickly, just from a fundamental level. Because usually the fun thing about team ups is that you don't get. I mean, there's not like a forced synergy between characters usually. That's what makes it cool, because it's something that you discover. It feels like something that's hidden and you get to discover it. You get to prove your really cool gameplay. Like you get to prove your skill through utilizing a synergy correctly that wasn't necessarily intended. It's got to be through base design of heroes that they synergize with each other, and not just having straight up buff abilities when being near each other. It's crazy. Like, the amount of value some of these things give is so fucking insane. It's so insane. And in the long run, trust me, everyone are going to get so tired of this. So tired of it. And it's not because it isn't fun, but it's because it is incredibly unfair. It is so crazy. Like, there's not going to be a role lock. But once you get into ranked and people start figuring the game out more and more, obviously everyone are going to be running like the most powerful team ups. And that's what we're building comps around now. And so, yeah, there might not be a role lock, but you'll sort of have to be forced to play certain characters, right? And certain roles. And mark my words, this is going to happen. They are absolutely most definitely going to remove team ups from ranked at some point, because it's not going to be fun to play with. And then the last one, tanks are boring and they are bad, not as a role, but in terms of personal agency. They are boring as a role, but they are not bad as a role. They are just bad in terms of personal agency, because you don't get to do much. You are just a presence that impacts the game by a lot, but not because of anything you do, just because you're there. And not entirely, because obviously you can have high skill and do very high skill things on the tanks, but it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel good because you don't get to hurt people. That's one of like the big main things, right? So why are tanks not fun to play? Lack of damage, lack of satisfaction, random and unnecessary drawbacks, and overbloated kits. Why is it important that tanks are boring? It's important because it'll kill the game, obviously. And the reason it'll do that is because there's a smaller pool of tank players and support players than DPS, right? And if no one plays tanks or support, then people will want role queue, which the developers have said they are not going to create. But if role queue comes, then people will stop playing because they have to give up the DPS role the majority of the time. And maybe just half the time, right? There are going to be people that play tanks and supports or whatever. But like, you're going to have to give up your role like a lot. But not only that, like, either you get role queue or you get to have bad games like this, because you're not in, like, people aren't going to give up their roles, right? So that's why it's just going to be DPS players, because the tanks aren't fun or interesting to play. So there's no incentive to actually even to take the game seriously by itself, to take it competitively seriously in a competitive integrity way. You're not going to do that if you don't at least have some kind of satisfaction in the game. And the DPS heroes don't feel the problems of the tank heroes, because the tank heroes' issues are mainly felt because, well, in other words, DPS heroes don't experience the issues because their attacks, either are very long range away from them, they are long distance away from them, or their attacks are usually just, magic blasts or gunfire, right? And that's not gonna have the same impact as what you would want from the tanks. So let's talk about the different tanks and what their issues are. And then by the end of this video, I'll also propose my changes to Hulk. I want to do one for each of like the heroes. I want to do one for all of them. but we're just gonna have to do Hulk for now because it's a lot of work that goes into that. Anyway, what are the problems with Hulk? So first of all, he's extremely mismanaged or mismatched when it comes to the damage he deals, because he deals no damage at all. I think it's like 7 hits to kill a person from the Hulk to kill a person. That's like the normal health bar. 7 hits. It's incredible. He deals 40 damage. Like, what are you gonna do with that? It just feels bad. His abilities feel terrible. And this is gonna be something for all of the tanks. All of the tanks have abilities that feel bad to use, or at least don't feel optimal. They don't feel as good as they could have. They don't feel as good as they do in other games. And all of the tanks, maybe except one, don't deal any damage. They don't deal damage, and their abilities are just not fun to use. For Hulk specifically, his shield is extremely jarring and out of character, and it doesn't really make sense why he has it. It's just bloated, and there's no reason to have it there. Especially also because he's specifically about diving, right? He jumps into the enemy team, so why would he have an AoE shield for his team? And sure, it's the thing of, well, our tanks gotta have some kind of, team utility. But no, they don't, because Venom doesn't have any team utility. We want Hulk to be more like Venom, and that doesn't mean Venom is perfect. Venom is none of the tanks are perfect. They are, that's not a high bar to set, but none of them are good even. Venom is also bad, even if he is maybe the one that's the best of them. Maybe. We want Hulk to be the dive tank, or one of the dive tanks, right? When you have a character like him, he's not gonna be anything else. So he shouldn't have the shield at all. It doesn't even make sense. It makes no sense in any way for him to have a shield. The leap control is also terrible, because you take a pre-existing mobility control set scheme, and something which is universal for pretty much every other character, and the ones that aren't, it's very, very intuitive how they are supposed to use theirs, and then you put in his mechanic, which is extremely unintuitive, and it's janky, and it's sometimes you mess it up because you didn't charge for long enough, because it's not very clear animation wise and like feel wise. And also, like, when you're in a fight, you just have to hold it down permanently, because you want it to be ready when you want to get out again. So instead of just having the leap on a separate button, you just have to hold down your jump while you're in a fight. Oh, nice. That's so nice. It doesn't work. Like, the leap controls it doesn't work. Also, like, just to let you know, what is it? It's called World Breaker. Like, his low-key slam ultimate when he's in his monster form. It deals, I believe it's like 5 hits of 40 damage. It's 200. It's 200 damage. The only character I think that kills is Bruce Banner. Like, what? Why? That's so bad. And I get it, like, okay, Hulk is gonna jump in and he's gonna grab you, and then he's gonna one-shot you, and then he's gonna jump out. Right, but that's also why we don't give him a fucking 0 cooldown leap. That, well, the only cooldown it has is that you have to charge it. There's so many problems with that. It's incredible, really, because it is the Incredible Hulk. Yeah, very funny, like, pun intended, right? Anyway, let's get on to Thor, right? So the main issues with Thor are that his passive resource and his shared cooldowns, both of them are extremely unnecessary and are very unfun, because they are just drawbacks for no reason. He doesn't have to have them, but it's just a weird gimmick that just ruins how it feels to play Thor. Your abilities feel bad, and he has a lack of damage. Like, you never throw your hammer and think, oh my god, I just, it's not Javelin Spear from Orisa. It's just not. But that's sort of what it feels like it maybe should be, or at least it should feel not necessarily like it, but it should feel the same way fundamentally, but it should not, do the same thing, right? It doesn't feel good to throw the hammer. Also because it uses some of his resources. Like, why does he have them? He doesn't need to have them. Why would you ever want to do that? And sure, okay, so he has the omnidirectional mobility. So that one is at least usable, but it feels bad in the way that you have to charge it because of the lack of cosmetic feedback and the lack of damage and the lack of just oomph in the game. Like the lack of the engine. In Overwatch, a spell like that could easily be made, could easily feel so good. I don't know if there is one already. There probably is. I can't remember. But like, you could sort of, no, you can't really compare it to Reinhardt, but I suppose a little bit, I guess. Or something like Doomfist. Doomfist feels amazing. Yeah, it is. Well, I suppose that is basically what it is, right? Not entirely, because Doomfist is more of a damage spell. But still, it just doesn't feel fun to use. You also can't combo your spells because all of them are on a shared cooldown, even if you do have the passive resources. And you can't combo your F with anything, even if you didn't have the shared cooldowns. It just does not make sense why he's supposed to have it at all. Like, at all. He also doesn't have, like, so the thing is, his shield, right, the shield he puts down, that's actually pretty interesting because people take damage when they walk through it. And so what I see is that what's intended is that you use your hammer and you use your dash to pull people through the field. But, well, or rather, you don't use your hammer for it because it doesn't have knockback, right? But it feels like that should be the gameplay loop with it. It feels like he should be able to put down the shield, jump in, and push people back into the shield, maybe, right? Or just, exit the shield in some way and just push people through it. Or just engage and then put down the shield and something like that, right? It's just not fun. And he could be really fun. Like, you can dash up into the air, you can throw your hammer on someone who's in the air, and then you'll return to the ground, having knocked them out of the sky. And then, because you overload on, I don't know, power, you enter F form, like make it into like an overload thing. And sure, it disables your other spells, but now it's not a spell itself, it's just more of like a passive ability, right? So you enter that form and you just start hammering away at people. That'd be so cool. Make him like fucking Rumble from League of Legends, right? So it's like, just remove his F. It's not an ability anymore. It's his new passive. Remove the entire gimmick of the resources and the shared cooldowns. Just give him the dash, give him the hammer flow, make both of them feel much better and give them more damage. And then give him the overload F form, right? So yeah, that's what you have to balance now. That's your new gimmick. Penny Parker. Right, so she's kind of interesting. But the issue with Penny Parker is that we already have Venom, who's a spider tank. And so why do we need Penny Parker too? I mean, it's because Spider-Man is very, very popular. But you're going to have two spider-related characters in the tank roles. And so, okay, you've got to find two different ways to utilize the web swing, because that's what they are primarily about, right? It's like the main thing for the Spider-Verse. And she does it she's pretty interesting about it. she's got an interesting idea going. That's kind of cool. You can work with that. But then the developers, I don't know why, but they just result like they made her into the mind character with the minds. Why? It feels like they needed a mind character and they just threw it onto Penny. They were like, well, we don't actually really know where to put this. All we really cared about was making sure that Penny felt like a mech and felt like she could, and she's a spider person. That's all we care about. So just give her the minds. We gotta have minds. Give her the minds. It's for the people that can't aim. Just give them some minds, okay? And give her rapid fire. That's like I believe it's borderline, fucking, what is that called? Fuck, infinite, borderline infinite ammo, right? It's just there's no recourse to like running out of ammo, even if you could. I don't remember if she can or not, but like still, it just doesn't matter, right? Okay, so the issues with the mines also just that it's not fun in any way. You always just put them the same place, either in a choke or you put them in the spot of most attention. It's not interesting where you have to put them. For some reasons, she has different types of mines, but I guess most people don't even know that. Like, why does she have different mines? Why does she even have a separate spell that spams mines? Like, she just spams them. It doesn't matter what she does with them. She just runs around, spams a few. If she's lucky, people step on them. But they have pretty big radius, so that's probably going to happen at some point, since there's 6 people. You can also just spam them in like a corridor, and someone will just walk into that and be one shot. And then you put down like the sentry thing, the spider nest, and it's just gonna pump out shit, and it doesn't fucking matter. Because like there's no control about how you want to use it. Or at least there's very, very little control about it. And the other thing is that using the Q is also weird because like the controls are very bad, because she hits in the way that she's in the direction she's facing and not the way that your camera is facing. So it's just a jarring experience, the same way Hulk is. Or not the same way, but it's jarring and bad like with Hulk. The abilities, once again, just feel bad to use for the most part. Like, you had an interesting spider gimmick. You didn't have to build the rest of her kit for mines. You didn't have to do that. It completely makes the character unfun and just lame. It doesn't feel like there's any importance in where you place anything. Also, she has like the CC on a 3-second cooldown, which is fucking crazy in a game like this. And it sort of feels like the only reason she has that is because, well, we couldn't give it to Spider-Man because that would be too powerful and he has too much going on already, and he's a DPS character. And DPS characters shouldn't have that much access, especially if they are a diver as well, right? He's high movement and mobility rather. He's high mobility, so he shouldn't also have like the CC. So we'll give that to someone else. And Penny Parker, okay, sure, we'll give it to the tank. That makes sense, right? The tank is the character that gets to have CC, sure. But in execution, it's just like it doesn't synergize with the kit. Like, why would you want to? I don't even think that you can get a mine ready if you've stunned someone. Maybe you can actually. I haven't even tested that, but it's not even. I don't even. Okay, it kind of does interest me to figure out. And I guess in that case, it would make sense. Sure, you could combo it like that. That's fine to design, but I don't know. It's such a low cooldown. And that's sort of like, yeah, you want to have it on a low cooldown because that's what feels thematically correct. But in execution, it's just so powerful and really annoying, right? And maybe that's not a big issue. Sometimes there are going to be annoying characters. It is what it is. but her kit feels mismanaged. It feels like she should not have been the main character. Then we have Venom. Alright, so Venom's entire kit is a single string of spells. So basically, it's a single spell. Your kit is that you use your spider swing or your web swing or whatever to enter a battle. Then you dive into the middle of the enemy team. Once you've dived into the enemy team, you use your bond on all of them. And then when you're low HP, you use your shield. And by then, you should have enough time to also swing out again. And like, it's just a single spell. Like, okay, sure, you can argue that his swing by itself is a unique spell, but the other ones are just it's so boring. It's just the same thing. There's no variation to how you want to use it, right? And like, you can enter battle with the dive also by crawling on a wall and leaping off the wall, and that's also kind of cool. That is kind of cool. But his mobility on walls is kind of low, so it's just like, is that really how you want to do it? Maybe it is, and that it is cool. It's fun, so that's good. It's good that you can do that. But the rest is just boring. You don't really have a lot of control of the swing either. And it just, his abilities generally just feel kind of bad. Like, if you were to imagine heroes like these in Overwatch, what wouldn't they feel like? Like, Hulk would be something like Winston, right? It'd feel much better in some ways. And then imagine the things that make Hulk Hulk rather than Winston Winston, right? And how in an Overwatch engine or whatever, in the game of Overwatch, how that would have been handled, how that would feel to play. That'd be so much better. The same thing with Venom and all of the other ones. Like, this is the other thing. Like, why is his defensive spell the way it is? Why is it the way it is? It's just a shield. You click a button and you get a shield that you wouldn't ever want to use it for anything else. There's no reason to have it. There is no reason to have it. Because either you use it when you have a lot of HP and it doesn't do as much, or you use it when you have low HP and it does the most. And you might say, well, in Hammond, in Overwatch, you have Hammond, Wrecking Ball, right? And he's basically Venom. And then it's like, well, but no, he's not. Because the amount of freedom, the amount of control that Wrecking Ball has in his ball form and his grapple hook and the sort of gameplay loop he gets to have with that spell alone, with all of the things that he can do with it, that is so incredibly deep. That character is so deep and interesting. His dive is better because of the way that your guns work and the way you have to play it out. His shield is more interesting because in his case, you can actually sort of adjust because it's related to how many people are present. So if you jump into an entire team, you just activate it, sure, and that feels pretty good. You know, you get a big shield. But if you're alone with someone, you don't want to not use it. You want to use it at the right time, right? You don't want to just not use it because you're not low. And sure, then you could argue that, well, if Venom is getting healed, then you don't want to use it, right? And that's true. Like, there is some depth to that, right? But there's not. You can't compare the two characters. Wrecking Ball feels so much better in so many ways. The other thing about Venom is that his attacks feel really weird because he's using his tendrils and not his claws, not his fist. He's not using his upper body for anything. Or, well, I suppose he is, but not his arms and muscles, right? He's not biting the head off people. And why not? Instead, you're running around and you're stabbing people with tendrils. And it just, that's so weird. That's not Venom. I mean, yeah, he can do that, but like that's not where the majority of his like fighting ability should come from. And I know that he has his melee attack, but he should be running around swiping people with his claws. He should be mauling people. He should be eating their heads. She should be biting them. And he does do that in melee. When you use your melee, he does do that. But why do we have to have the tendrils? And it's because of range, I get that. But like, let it be a power where he also swipes. So he swipes and he bites and all that stuff, but he also does the thing with the tendrils. It like, because you can already combo the two attacks. It doesn't look bad to do. The only thing is that if you do your melee attack, it locks you out of actually attacking with your primary. Just make it a temporary power that maybe increases his defenses, and you get to be able to deal more damage and you get longer range. And then have him swipe normally. And so whenever you activate the spell, you don't just stab with tendrils, you both stab with tendrils and swipe with your claws, right? And also, for a defensive spell, why doesn't he have something closer to Zac from League of Legends? Like with the blobs and picking them up to heal. Why wouldn't that be what Venom does? That'd be so much more interesting. He'd have a really good use of his mobility as well, right? And like, his combo just feels like there are the only variations there are like so minuscule that it doesn't even matter. Like even his ultimate, it's like, okay, you dash in and then you use your ultimate, and you either use it, I suppose, as CC execute or as like an engage because it's current HP, so he deals more the more HP they have, right? And that's also just weird because like it's the Jaws bite. So why would the Jaws bite not be an execute and rather be like a max HP damage spell? It feels that's so weird. Why? Why? It doesn't make sense and it feels bad. Captain America. Proud Patriots or whatever. So Captain America has the potential to be pretty fun. But he lacks damage. Just like everyone else, damage is a huge issue for him. He has no damage. His kit is extremely bloated. Like, he has way too many buttons. You don't need to give heroes that many buttons. You just need to give them a few thematic ones and make sure that they feel good. And some of them can have a few more buttons and some of them a few less. Like, Spider-Man is a hero that's very difficult to create few buttons for. Because he's got to be able to swing and he's got to be able to whip two people. And whip people to himself. That's fine. He's got to be able to shoot webs and he's got to be able to punch because that's what he primarily does. Maybe he might be a little bloated, but there's no denying that he's a difficult and very fun character, and they managed to convert Spider-Man into a hero shooter character, and that by itself is a fucking achievement, and he's so much fun. So I don't think we should trash too much on Spider-Man, even if he does have some of the same issues. But the issues, in conjunction with everything else going on, just ends up being really ugh. Also, Captain America's character design is pretty shit, but suppose it is a different way to show a man out of time, right? I don't know if it's the ideal way of doing it, but yeah. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So he's lacking damage and he has a bloated kit. right now on the top of my head, I can't even remember all of the spells, I don't think. He has like, he's running fast, which is fine. That's like a very simple thing that's fine to have. He can jump higher when he runs fast, and that's fine too. That's also very simple. So those two don't really need to take up an ability slot necessarily. Although together they do become like a mobility spell, so maybe. Then he can do the thing with blocking with his shield, which is really good and which Captain America needs to have. Then he has a dive and he has a shield bash. So he has apart from like his base movement options, like or just running and jumping, he also has 2 more movement spells, and he has like 1 more even because of his ultimate. So he has so much mobility. And then together with his passive, that's really cool. It's cool that like you go in, you beat him up, and then you activate your shield so that you can throw it once you're out of there because you have a lot of mobility, right? But it doesn't feel good in any way because he has no damage. And because the abilities themselves, they just don't feel good, right? Once again, if Captain America was in Overwatch, he'd be so much fun to play. So much fun. He's a mix between Brigitte and Doomfist, right? But he doesn't feel like either of them. He doesn't even come close. Brigitte is more fun than he is, just because she feels so much better to play. And also, like, he does not actually need to have as much in his kit as he does. Like, really, he does not. He doesn't need to have the dive. You can't just let him have the shield bash. And then perhaps once he has held up his shield, you can let him activate, the ranged attack. You can let him throw his shield after he has held it up, and that way you've already removed a bunch of like bloat from him. Right, Doctor Strange. Lack of damage. The damage he can deal is small and only lands on tanks because of his E, which is very weird for the character he is, because he's ranged partly, and because he doesn't have mobility to get close to people. And the options for mobility that he do have are very slow and very long cooldowns. So it's like, no, you're not really gonna want to do that. In execution, he actually works a little bit better than he does in theory, which is surprising. But I don't think it's good. He has a bunch of thematic big spells, which are like Timmy design, which are just like massive, so super cool spells that just, oh my god, this is so awesome to use. Like, that's so thematic. He has the Eye of Agamotto, he pushes spirits out people. Oh my god, that's Doctor Strange. If it's anyone, that's Doctor Strange, right? And he has the portal. Oh my god, that's Doctor Strange. And he has the big shield. And oh my god, that's sure. I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? That's kind of cool. And he can levitate. Holy shit, yes, that's Doctor Strange. But together, the abilities just sort of feel weird, right? Q also lacks self-reliance. So it's like, and some of the other tanks, I believe, have this issue too, where it's like, they can't even do anything with their own ultimate. Doctor Strange for sure can't really do anything with his own ultimate. I suppose he can explode on him, but like, even then, it's like, is that really that interesting? Feels bad to use. He has so few damage options. He's not gonna get much damage out. He has a really really good kit. He's really strong, right? He's got the shield. He can shield while he levitates. That's so cool. That's a cool combo. But like the Q and the E are abilities for a character that wants to dive into people. Doctor Strange, his options for diving into people are walking through a portal he has to set up and levitating into people. And sure, he can get there sort of with the shield, but it's still like, really? And it's not necessarily bad, but he's also just lacking damage and feel good moments. If he had some of the signature Overwatch tank feel good, and he had some more damage and something that's a lot more satisfying to throw out, then absolutely he'd be amazing, or at least he'd be better, right? It does feel like there's very little connection between his spells, even though they do end up working somewhat okay together. It still just feels weird. And then, yeah, mismatched kit, which I also just talked about, right? Yeah, so he's got a kit like a support hero. Like the shield and the teleport and his mobility option together. And yeah, sure, okay, so it's a frontline thing. In hero shooters, it's a frontline thing. So sure, it's for a tank, right? But a portal specifically, it's like that's more of a support thing. And I'm not only saying that because of Symmetra, but also just because it doesn't really help. It doesn't help in this way that you would want for a tank. I think, but Strange could easily end up working and be fun if you do some stuff about him. His kit actually does work somewhat well together, but you need to do something about him because he's very boring, right? Also, his movement spells are once again I think I mentioned, but slow and on long cooldowns, which is an issue. Then we have Groot. So Groot lacks consistent damage. He can deal insane amounts of damage out, but he can't, well, basically ever actually get it out. He has two separate spells for creating walls. Which, why? Why would you want to do that? It's so weird. Just give Groot 3 charges of the wall instead of 2, and then make it so that whenever he hits people with that wall, it both swipes the enemies and it also gives him some shield. You don't need to have a separate spell for that. It doesn't even need to look different. Like, sure, that wall might be a little bigger and it might have a little more health, but why is that interesting? It's not. That's so uninteresting. His regular spells don't even tie into creating walls or tie into like the idea of having walls in his kit. And what I mean by that, because you might say, well, if he hits people, if he throws his thing on his walls, then it replicates them and it deals damage, right? So it does work with his walls. Yeah, but that's a very forced, right? You could do that with anything. You could say anything that interacts with this thing does something with it. What we would like is something that forces people to interact with his walls as an obstacle. We want something that makes it so that the enemy has to pay attention or do something about the wall, or have to at least feel like they are obscured or obstructed because of the wall. And his regular spells don't do that. He also has a hidden melee ability, which is to knock up people on his third melee attack. He's also a character like Venom, where I think his base attack should be melee, and then he should be able to activate some kind of ability that lets him be ranged for a little while, and maybe give him some other like ability, right? Maybe if he's close to walls, he gets to be ranged. The one cool thing about Groot is that you can combo your primary attack and your melee attack to actually to increase the attack speed of your walls by a very, very high amount, right? So if you're solo with someone and you have like a few walls set up, and you click primary fire, melee, primary fire, melee, then your walls just go crazy, and that's pretty fun to do actually. But in reality, you're never going to use it because it's completely impractical. It's also impractical because, as if I recall correctly, they also work when allies shoot people that are close to the wall. So it's like you don't even get the benefit because there's a cooldown on the swipe, which also means you have to like you have to juggle your attacks if you want to do the fast attack speed thing with the walls. But yeah, once again, it just doesn't matter, right? He's got the Zarya ultimate. That's fine. That's fine. That does work because that is something that fucks with mobility while he's able to create walls. So he's able to combo those spells together, right? He's able to create walls that make sure that people have higher chance of getting hit by his ultimate, and he's able to make walls around people that are hit by his ultimate. He's able to do it for damage. He's able to do it to CC people and make sure they can't leave. He's able to do it for so many reasons. To make sure that people can't help each other out, right? And that's what he's about. That what he is what he should be about. But yeah, he's just not interesting in any way. And yeah, once again, the abilities feel bad to use. Right. Magneto. So Magneto's barrier feels terrible. It feels really bad. It's quite strong if you know how to use it, but it just, or rather if you use it at the right time, I feel. But it feels so bad. It feels so bad. The bubble CDs or cooldowns are extremely long, and shared cooldowns between the bubbles feel so bad too. And I think he was just buffed with the cooldown specifically. So at least that's a little better now. But when it was 16 seconds, that shit was so bad. So bad. Like, the bubbles are strong, but like, come on, really? Anyway, it's a little better now, but like, the shared cooldown thing is still, it's just obnoxious. His attacks and his right click right click his right click is weak. It doesn't feel good to fire it out, even if you have 3 charges. And to have 1 and 2 charges, it doesn't even matter remotely, right? I mean, that's basically only for a misclick that you would ever want to do that, even if you are about to die. It's like they gotta be like 5 HP for you to even use that. And you're a tank, so that's not gonna happen. And his abilities, yeah, they just kind of feel bad to use. His ultimate is amazing. It feels so fucking cool. That's something I didn't even write. But his ultimate, why does it have an overload mechanic? Why does it have that drawback gimmick? Why? I get that it's powerful. I get it's powerful. But there's no, I don't feel like there's any good indicator for it overloading. There's just no reason. But it's too powerful. Well, yeah, no shit. Just, it's an ultimate. Come on, give it some more cooldown if that's the problem. He doesn't need to have it at all. It ruins the spell. It's just like when you fuck that shit up, it feels so terrible. You can already one-shot people. Just make it deal less damage if that's the problem, and then make it deal more based on how much you absorb instead. That'd be great. Why isn't he an absorb hero? Like, the only way you can make a bubble character and make them interesting as a tank is if you do the Zarya thing, where they increase the damage output by the damage they reduce. Empower his abilities. Maybe his barrier gets bigger or something, lasts longer maybe, without it being stupidly broken, right? And maybe he just deals more damage. Maybe what you do is actually that you increase the damage of his right click by a lot and the power of it. And then what you do is that he charges it up whenever he blocks damage. Why isn't that so much cool? And it would fit with his ultimate as well, as I just said. Like, just have him charge up its damage based on how much he blocks. That is the cool thing about Magneto's ultimate. It is that you get to stop people from shooting. And so, yeah, okay, it might feel bad in high elos that people will just stop shooting entirely. But how powerful is that not? So does it really matter? Right? You force people to stop shooting, and sometimes they are forced to keep shooting. So you just use it in reaction to other people, right? Feels unfun. So how do we save them? For Hulk, what we need to do is increase his damage output, right? We gotta make him feel better. We gotta make him feel more like a dive tank. We increase his damage. We make him feel slower. We give him more charge time. We make him feel more like a big raid boss who's gonna mess you up if you get close. We're gonna make it a little more difficult for him to get close, but give him a little more control and make him a little more streamlined. Make him feel a lot better in general. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, his attacks. He is the Hulk, so you cannot tell me in any way that he is going to deal 40 damage with his primary fire. That's disgusting. Just make him deal more damage and slow down his fire rate. That means that he's not just going to be dealing double damage. That's not what this says. He is going to be dealing more damage, but he's going to be dealing a lot more damage, but at a slower rate. So it is still more damage, but it's not obnoxious, right? His Gamma Burst, which is his clap. So when we think of Hulk, we think of a character that if he does not get close to people, then he's not going to be able to beat them up. He needs to get close to people to deal damage. Fair enough. So the clap is supposed to be his ranged ability. If we take Reinhardt as an example, Reinhardt is like Hulk in this way. He has low mobility, but he has he deals a ton of damage, but he has a hard time getting onto people. So how do you fix that? Because you've got to give him some tools, right? Otherwise, he's just not fun. So Reinhardt has his Fire Strike, which is a very, very slow projectile. For Hulk, I don't think we should do the same. What I think we should do is decrease the damage, or, well, for the first part, increase the potential charge time. So what I mean by this is that I couldn't find the numbers, so that's why there aren't numbers. But the charge time before he unleashes his clap, increase the maximum potential charge time, so that he can charge up to, not necessarily because this is a really big number, but upwards of like 3 seconds, right? So that's a very weak clap. I clapped in real life. It just became like this very, very pathetic thing. Anyway, increase the maximum charge time that you can charge up. And when you unleash that, deal damage based on the charge time, right? Why not? You can do it instantly if you want to combo it with your normal attack. So you can attack, Gamma Burst, boom, right? Attack, Gamma Burst, attack, Gamma. Well, obviously it has a really long cooldown. But just a singular attack and combo it with Gamma Burst. Then you get a short combo. And of 50 damage more, right? If you want to charge it up, charge it up. If the person is outside of heavy blow range, so your primary fire range, decrease the damage, because Hulk is weak to people that can get away from him. That is why he has the ability to make sure that they can't get away from him, and why he has the ability to get onto people. because he wants to be on top of people. Just give him the ability to deal more damage, make sure that it feels good, that it feels justified. If he's going to be charging up for a long time, the spell is going to be dealing a lot of damage because he locks himself out of just hitting with his heavy blow, right? So maybe 150 is even slightly too low. I don't think so, but you know, you get the point. It also depends on how long the charge time really is. Radioactive lockdown. So it just feels bad that it does deal damage. There's no real reason. You don't have to. This is the one spell that doesn't really, like, even if it does feel bad, it's not that necessary. But I still think that you should give it damage. Just give it some damage, right? Like, there's no down. It doesn't feel like there's a downside. Okay, Indestructible Guard. Just remove it. And give Incredible Leap the button. Give Incredible Leap the button press and remove Indestructible Guard. Because that is not who Hulk is. He doesn't want to use it. It's not who he's supposed to be. I don't know how you messed this up, actually. It's a little baffling even. Just remove it. It's just bloated. It doesn't need to be there. There's no reason. For the Incredible Leap, obviously just give it the shift button, right? Change its cooldown because it's fucking stupid that he can just do it whenever. I know that he did have a charge requirement, but still, it's just it's crazy. We have also given him a lot more damage, so we should compensate by nerfing his utility and nerfing his mobility as well. Because that's going to be what some of his weaknesses, right? Those two things are his weaknesses. So the one reason to have the Indestructible Guard, this is why it's actually there, okay? It's because you want to leap to your allies to protect them, and then you want to leap out again. But I just don't think it works in execution. It's not fun, and it's not thematic, and it doesn't feel good to play with. It doesn't work with the rest of the kit. It's just like it's just a secluded thing within his kit that I don't think he needs to have. For the charge time, the minimum charge time removed, and then the maximum charge time 1 second. He doesn't need to have more. It feels really bad that it's more. Just let it be like this. And add some animations, add some actual cues that you know, tell you that you're about to do a powerful jump. Instead, because like it just feels dumb. It feels bad. Do it like Winston basically, but give it a charge time, and then give it some damage based on your charge when he lands. Maybe this is even too little damage, right? Maybe it needs to deal more than this. However, I do think that might be a little too powerful. Anyway, the point is just that it needs to feel better, and it needs to not be something that you can just always use. So, when he enters Hulk Smash form, Monster Hulk form, we have to achieve a few things. One, he's got to become very powerful. And once again, we go back to Winston. And how do we do that? Well, if we increase his health by 50%, then we nerf his health pool slightly, which I think is reasonable. Increase his damage by a bit because he's Monster Hulk, and it looks like he does more damage, so give him more damage. Since he is enraged, we can also up his fire rate. So decrease his cooldowns by 50% and up his fire rate of his primary fire. Decrease the charge time of Gamma Burst and World Breaker, give it more damage so that he can actually one-shot people. It's insane that he cannot one-shot like the squishiest heroes. The only one that he can kill with it is literally Banner, which is ironic. It's stupid. It's so stupid. And I get why it's there. right? The reason he cannot one-shot people is because he can jump into people, just grab a person and jump out again. And that is why we make it so that he can't do that, right? Now he has a cooldown on his leap. And granted, I just told you I decreased the cooldown by 50%, so theoretically he could just jump in and do it and then jump out. So maybe that should be adjusted, right? That'd probably be a good idea. But then also, if you really want, like, you gotta have it one-shot people. You can't have it not one-shot people. So instead, just turn him back into Banner. If you do that, then you as the Hulk player, you have this very powerful tool that is your one-shot button. All you gotta do is make sure that it can be interrupted. And that if you do decide to one-shot somebody, you're gonna have to die yourself. You trade yourself for it. So you gotta find a place where you can survive. You gotta think about how to use it. And as the enemy, if you know Hulk is in his form, his Monster Hulk form, then you just make sure that you stand with your teammates that can do something about it, or that you don't stand alone so that he can be punished, right? A tank is a powerful role. If the tank trades himself for support, that's not a good trade. If it trades himself for DPS, that's not a good trade, unless the DPS uses their ultimates, I suppose, depending on who it is. Alright, so passively, generally as like a big part of the game, he's increase his weight, get some better physics, get a better engine, and I know this is impossible, by the way, but it's what needs to be fixed for like a tank perspective to make them feel good to play. And get him animations that display power. Give him heavier and slower animations, more charge up, and more cosmetic power, right? Something that doesn't really matter, like displacements in Overwatch. The amount of like knockbacks and knockups and all that don't really do much, but are just there because there's a powerful character that does something cool. Like that's huge. There's so many characters that have something extremely cool like that. So just give them this. Give them this. Mobility also generally feels very bad. So like base mobility. Mobility spells tend to feel really good. For DPS characters at least. But but like general just walking speed and base level mobility feels terrible in this game. Give the tank screen shakes and that follow motion of action rather, and powerful moments like landing from a leap in the case of Hulk. Let the camera sort of pan a little bit with his punches, with the spells that he uses. Get stronger sounds and distinct visual effects. His like Hulk's shout and also his clap, both of them feel like they are lasers. Like that's not Hulk. He doesn't shout lasers. He doesn't clap lasers, right? But give him these slight displacement and very very slight CC things that don't do a whole lot, but they just feel good. And the sounds and like the hits and all that stuff. And make his presence, but also just remember this is for all of the tanks. This slide is for all of the tanks. Make them loud. And give them like a loud and shaky ambience in the nearby presence. So it's like you can feel that they're close. And I know that this might feel a little bit bad, like, oh, I can't hide as a tank then. Well, sure, but that feels justifiable, right? You can't hide as a tank because you're not supposed to. You can stand still and you could probably hide that way. But if you're walking and if you're using spells, then you should be able to be heard quite easily. Because you are the center of attention. That's what you want to be. That's why you pick a tank. That's why you want to play a tank. You want to be the center of attention. Take a look at how Overwatch did tanks. The tanks in this game are being built like they are for a MOBA. but not only for MOBA. It's also just like they aren't even good if they were for MOBA. Like League of Legends has some really cool tanks, some really cool ones. A bunch of them are very simple and very easy, and that's generally how tanks tend to be. Also, like in Overwatch, it's also baseline quite easy. I generally don't think that tank is a very difficult role, and I play that it a lot, so I suppose I have some merit, right? But just, you know, make sure that they feel like they're supposed to. Take a look at, if you really want to do, just take inspiration from other games, understand why it is that they work in the other games, and why it is that it doesn't work here. All right, so that was what I had for now. So finally, I'm gonna end this video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, I am definitely going to create more. I'm definitely going to create the same kind of like, how do we fix them for Magneto and for Groot and all of the other tanks, right? I already gave you like a few examples of things I would change for some of the other characters, but I would love to go in depth for you. Generally, this is a really, really important issue because it is going to fuck with the longevity of the game and with the enjoyment of the game for everyone. And I think it needs to be fixed. And I can't comment much on supports, but my general perception is that it is the same situation with supports. Right, but just not as bad as tanks. Right, that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.